One of the best new animes of 2025, the mystery horror anime The Summer Hikaru Died's debut season has finally come to an end. And good God, what an absolute banger season it was. This anime very much surprising a lot of people, becoming one of the most popular and interesting debut animes of the entire year so far, with its combination of Japanese mythology and folklore mixed with its ever-evolving mystery, and of course its Junji Ito-like body horror scenes. Hello everyone, I'm Finn, welcome back to finnfilms. In today's video, we're going to be covering everything that happened in the debut season of The Summer Hikaru Died, this amazing horror anime. This is the Summer Hikaru Died Season 1 in a nutshell. Episode 1 of The Summer Hikaru Died opens as we watch a high school boy running through a mountain forest as rain pours down from the sky. In the distance, we hear men frantically yelling a name, the name Hikaru. Our perspective flashes as we see a strange multicolored tendril-type entity, the scene flashing again as we see a close-up of a young man's face in pain. The young man weakly saying one word, the name, Yoshiki. These are our two main characters, two high school boys and best friends, the characters Yoshiki and Hikaru. Yoshiki, we see, is desperately searching for Hikaru, who has mysteriously gone missing while on a hike in the mountains outside this rural Japanese town. As we see Hikaru injured and dying here in the rain on this mountaintop alone, as his best friend Yoshiki continues to search for him. Again, we see this strange, ethereal-like, eldritch horror seemingly entity expand, as we get another close-up of Hikaru's eye, the boy muttering the words, Anuki-sama, as he reaches out, this strange entity enveloping him. As the camera pans out from Hikaru's eyes, the screen fading to black. From here, we begin to see images of a sleepy, rural Japanese town several months later in a hot midsummer's day, as we hear the sounds of two boys talking. This again is our two main characters, the high school best friends, Yoshiki and Hikaru. As in these scenes, we learn that Hikaru seemingly went missing in these mountains for around a week several months earlier in January, only to later appear seemingly completely fine, but not remembering a single thing. The two friends banter and tease each other like classic high school childhood best friends, Hikaru asking if Yoshiki missed him when he was gone. Yoshiki, though, despite being happy that his best friend is back, has noticed over these few months that something is seemingly off with Hikaru. Though he may look, act, and sound just like his best friend, Yoshiki has noticed several small things that have slowly begun to add up. Things that have been to grow a nagging question in his mind. A question that here in this moment has finally bubbled to the surface. As we see with a determined look in his eye, Yoshiki asks the question, "You're not the real Hikaru, are you?" Now, this anime will constantly do this throughout episode 1 and I imagine season 1, but it has this really clever way that it sucks you in. This really clever way that it fades from scenes that seemingly feel like a slice of life anime. Just a wholesome interaction between two best friends, a little peek and look into a normal life between two people, and then suddenly hits you with complete horror and nightmare fuel. We watch this very cute, wholesome scene of two school friends just hanging out on a hot summer day suddenly change. The scene growing darker, not only in a literal sense, but in a feeling. The sounds of the wildlife in the background quickly fade to nothing, as Yoshiki asks his question, a droplet of ice cream soda falling to the ground, as Hikaru looks at him stunned. Hundreds of ants gathering around this sugary droplet in second, as just like the ice cream, we watch Hikaru's face suddenly melt away to this eldritch body horror nightmare fuel. The boy muttering the words, "I thought I copied him perfectly." This skin-walking eldritch horror nightmare fuel Hikaru gripping Yoshiki in a tight hug, begging him, pleading with him not to tell anyone, as he says he doesn't want to kill him. Yoshiki's breathing growing more and more dramatic, more and more rapid, as the boy begins hyperventilating, being overwhelmed by this insane series of events taking place before him, this visage of his best friend's face melting away. A fear and a suspicion that he had, but a question that he dared not ask out loud. Yoshiki being forced to reconcile with the fact that his friend Hikaru is no longer with him. And that even though this new Hikaru is a fake, is something completely different, regardless, he decides he wants him to stay. Now, this opening scene here is pretty iconic to anyone that has actually read this manga, and I have to say that the animators in the studio absolutely nail it. Horror is one of my favorite genres, whether it's manga, anime, live-action movie, what have you. Throughout the years, though, we've seen that many horror anime have struggled to live up to the heights that were created by their horror manga counterparts. I mean, look no farther than the many attempts to adapt the body horror works of Junji Ito, his mangas, his novels, into anime. With arguably, I'd say, every single attempt being a failure outside of episode 1 of Uzumaki. Or at the very least, all the attempts to adapt something like Junji Ito's body horror into anime have not been able to capture the same kind of level of horror and really otherworldliness that really are encapsulated inside of his drawings. I think this is one of the reasons why the kind of horror anime genre really hasn't had as many high-profile, really like major shows when compared to the other popular like genres of anime, whether it be like shonen, slice of life, isekai, romance, comedy. You get the idea. I think that it's just hard to capture the same kind of sense of terror and horror into an animated work as opposed to in the manga hand-drawn page. Like, obviously, you have to add voice acting, music, sound effects, and the timing of these sound effects and voice acting, how they do, the tone of the voice acting are extremely important to capture the correct feeling or vibe that a scene is trying to convey. And I think that this is even more important when you are doing horror, when you're trying to invoke feelings of terror, feelings of anxiety. And as you can see just from the opening kind of scenes from this anime, The Summer Hikaru Died has done these kind of things absolutely beautifully well, and will continue to do so throughout episode 1, especially in the way that they lull the viewer into a false sense of security. The way that they draw us in with this almost a slice of life story that is being told, only to quickly slap us across the face and remind us that no, this is very much a horror anime. I just want to interrupt this video real quick, guys, to say if you are enjoying this video or you've learned something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as your engagement on this video is the easiest way to put this video into the algorithm, and it really does go a long way to helping me. Okay, let's get back to the video. From here, we are taken into a series of flashback scenes, as Yoshiki remembers the last conversation that he had with Hikaru leading up to his mysterious disappearance. The boy suddenly waking up, having realized that he had dreamt this entire scene. Yoshiki struggling to accept that this new absurd reality he finds himself in, the reality where his best friend is dead and gone, replaced by this thing, this entity masquerading as the person that he cared most about in the world. Yoshiki trying to come to terms with this absurdity, that he has decided to accept this new creature, this entity, and play along with this complete farce of a relationship. Yoshiki believing that even if this is not the real Hikaru, it's better to have it in his life than to not have Hikaru at all. The boys then head off to school together, where we watch them, along with their classmates, participate in this choir-like song. The song fading to the background as we are suddenly introduced to a new, strange, yet important character. A character named Tanaka. We see that he is carrying a gerbil in a small cage, the gerbil frantically running on this wheel, as he enters into a couple's apartment, saying that he is from his company, as we watch him sweep the apartment with his gerbil in hand, seemingly looking for something. The song of the high school choir continuing to sing in the background, as we watch him pull a door open to see a horrifying supernatural-like wall with the fucking face. Tanaka destroying the wall with a crowbar. Again, throughout these entire scenes, this choir-like song of the school children plays in the background. Now, I absolutely love the use of music here in the Summer Hikaru Died anime, specifically how they use this technique, which is known as source music. Specifically meaning that at times when music is used for a piece of media, the soundtrack specifically, that music is being played within the world itself. For example, this scene here with the music being from the choir of these kids singing. And it creates this very weird dynamic of watching this very odd man destroy this horrifying human-faced wall while listening to a group of high school kids sing a choir song in Japanese. As well, our new character, our friend Mr. Tanaka here, introduces a very integral, crucial part of our story of The Summer Hikaru Died. Specifically, the mystery element of just what the fuck is going on with this creature that ultimately claimed Hikaru, and what was it doing out there in the mountain, and what do people know? Meanwhile, back in the high school, we have very much transferred into this very much slice of life-esque setting, as we watch Yoshiki and Hikaru interact with one another throughout their school day. This new Hikaru being amazed at all of these brand new human experiences, such as the meaning behind the words in the song, being moved by the plot of a film that they watch in class, and being amazed by a fried piece of meat. After school ends, we get another really cool example of this source music technique here as we watch this group of high school students begin practicing their jazz band after class. The sound of this jazz music begins playing for the next minute plus, as we watch a montage scene of life in and around this town, of other high school characters, of Yoshiki and Hikaru riding around their bikes and just hanging out together. Again, this anime very much lulling us into this false sense of security, by creating this very happy-go-lucky, almost tranquil atmosphere, only for it to subtly remind us that no, this is a horror story. It does this first in this scene with this cat that absolutely freaks out when it sees Hikaru. Second, when this woman seemingly senses his presence as the two boys bike next to her, her face fading into one of dread and horror. Third, here when Yoshiki and Hikaru cross this bridge, the sound suddenly slowing down dramatically in this super jarring way, as we hear Yoshiki's inner monologue about how f***ed up it is that he's just going along with this. The fact that this thing, this skinwalker, has claimed his best friend, and he's just acting as if nothing is wrong, declaring in his mind that he must be insane, that he has to be crazy, as this is crazy, only to finally accept that even if this thing is a fake, he still wants him to stay. Here, let me just play you a quick clip of this scene so you really get the idea, because I don't think my description of it really conveys how absolutely jarring and horrifying it is.
それを受け入れとる俺も怖い怖い怖い普通になんやねんあれ勘弁してくれ俺クソ俺クソ偽物でもそばにいてほしい
And the final subtle hint and reminder that this is actually a horror story being told here occurs when the boys encounter this old woman. The woman absolutely losing her shit at seeing Hikaru, yelling and screaming, declaring that Nonuki-sama has come down from the mountain as she frantically runs inside her house in sheer panic and terror. This scene very much playing into this idea of this strange mystery, this mystery of what exactly this entity is that has taken over Hikaru's body, and how it relates to seemingly certain members of the town that know more than they are leading on. Finally, though, we get what is my favorite scene in all of episode 1, and what I think is easily the best moment of horror, of sheer terror, that occurs in episode 1 of this anime. After Hikaru and Yoshiki are done hanging out for the day, we watch a horrifying figure stumbling slowly towards this old woman's house. It being seemingly teased that this is possibly what she saw when she looks at Hikaru. As we watch the old woman panicking inside, a distorted Hikaru's voice rings out, asking if it can come in, repeatedly saying her name over and over again, telling her that she has a delivery, as the woman begins to cry, growing ever more panicked, finally screaming out that you will never get inside this house. As suddenly the screen fades out, as finally we hear Hikaru's voice, now completely normal, saying, "I'm already inside." The woman turning in horror as she sees some sort of trail of a creature leading behind her. The screen quickly fading to black as we are shoved down this woman's throat. As the credits roll, we see that the police have arrived and that the old woman is dead. Other members of the town begin panicking that they are going to be next to die, that Nonuki-sama is coming, that Indo's ritual has failed. The final scene revealing that Mr. Tanaka has been asked to come to the village and investigate this strange supernatural phenomenon that people in the town are nowhere near ready for, as episode 1 of the Summer Hikaru Died finally comes to an end. Episode 2 opens as Hikaru and Yoshiki are biking to school, Yoshiki stopping as a police car comes rushing past them, Hikaru informing him that he heard some old lady died the previous night. The old woman, Matsura. Matsura being the woman we saw in episode 1 who completely freaks out and lost her when she saw Hikaru, this woman being one of several older adult characters in this village that seemingly can tell that something is not completely right with Hikaru. Of course, we know, the audience, from the events of episode 1 that Matsuda was killed by the strange doppelganger Hikaru the previous night. This scene being one of my favorite horror scenes that have happened so far from this anime. However, Hikaru acts none the wiser to his best friend Yoshiki, who we see is seemingly suspicious about this strange event. Our scene quickly flashes as we see the paranormal investigator Tanaka driving in his car, jamming out to music on his way to investigate this little town. Please someone in the comments down below tell me what this song is that this man is jamming out to in his car. It sounds so familiar. I feel like it might even be like an intro to another anime, but I cannot for the life of me place where I've heard this song before. As well, we finally get to see the opening animation and intro song for this anime, both being absolute bangers. If you guys have watched any of my other anime content, you know that I am an absolute fan and sucker for a banger intro animation sequence, and the Summer Hikaru Died definitely delivers on that front. We flash back to the boys at school, where one of Yoshiki's friends begs him to walk him home, saying that his usual route home is under construction, so he has been forced to walk through the mountain forest to get home, and he is absolutely terrified. Now, they've teased the ominous nature of this forest in episode 1, the fact that people don't normally venture out alone into this forest, and it seems to be accepted by many of the older townsfolk in this village that either strange spirits or entities seem to inhabit it. Overall, it just has bad juju, bad vibes. Something that is very much a kind of trope in Japanese media and kind of mythology and folklore, this idea that malevolent spirits or entities or yokai generally inhabit forests, a lot of times mountain forests. The boy begs Yoshiki and the girls to walk him home, Hikaru butting in, saying that this sounds awesome and he will gladly tag along. The girls being confused because they know that Hikaru is generally a complete chicken and would never normally want to do this. Of course, we and Yoshiki know that this is not really Hikaru, as the group set out together. Meanwhile, Tanaka arrives at the Matsuda crime scene, having been hired by the adults of the village to investigate the many strange events that have been happening. Again, we reference this mystery of this mountain spirit or entity that many of the older characters in our story seem to have some sort of prior knowledge of. This entity we know being teased to be the one that has body snatched Hikaru. The townsfolk seemingly having some kind of previous experience with this entity, and many are terrified for their lives, especially after Matsuda's death. They are terrified that they will be next. One of these townsfolk mentioning that the Endo's ritual must have been a failure, the Endo family being Hikaru's family. We then flash back over to our school children friends who make their way to the forest. However, nothing sinister seemingly happens. Again, one of my favorite things about this anime is how it seemingly shifts kind of between genres, sometimes shifting between a kind of slice of life, happy-go-lucky anime, and then hitting us with the real horror vibes. This anime very much lulling us into a false sense of security with these very much slice of life kind of themes and vibes, only to slap you in the face and remind you that no, this is very much a horror story. Tanaka goes with some of the villagers to investigate Matsuda's home, where he mentions that she must have had some sort of encounter with this entity when she was a child. We get this super awesome full circle vertical camera shot where the frame starts on the ground and then slowly does a vertical 360 pan. We see Tanaka speaking upside down, the camera then panning to the ceiling, only to come back down to rest on the villagers across from him. And now I'm a complete cinematography nerd, so I absolutely loved this shit. It very much reminds me of the crazy multiple 360 shot that we got in the awesome horror film It Follows. The village elders then inform Tanaka that Matsuda used to be normal until her daughter seemingly went missing without a trace. Meanwhile, we watch the kids venture back through this creepy forest, Yoshiki looking up into the trees, spotting a weird, blurry, zigzag figure moving side to side. He stops looking closer, as to our horror, deep in the tree line, we see a strange, disfigured, spectral girl with a long-ass neck. Yoshiki's eyes going wide with panic, as he finally comprehends what he is seeing, and that it is coming right for him. Hey girl, what that neck do?
I would like to humbly apologize for my inappropriate joke. It was childish, and I have to say that I have learned my lesson, and it will never happen again.
Hikaru calls out to Yoshiki saying, "Oh crap, you saw it, didn't you?" That's not good, as it's going to follow you now, because the spirits of this forest are lonely. They do an amazing job in making this scene just feel absolutely creepy and scary as hell. From the music to the sound effects to the way that they make Hikaru's voice sound like super muffled when he is speaking to Yoshiki. Even making part of this scene be first person through Yoshiki's point of view, something that they do a lot in this episode, and which is honestly something that I can't really remember any other anime, like, doing. Yoshiki then begins to completely panic as we see the face of this entity slowly swinging behind him. Hikaru telling him to come here as we suddenly hear a loud bang. Hikaru being thrown back as blood comes out from his nose. This is another absolutely iconic scene from the manga, and it is later revealed that this weird doppelganger Hikaru, in this moment, seemingly ate or absorbed this weird long-necked spectral being. Well, I don't know if ate is necessarily the right word. I guess he more kind of like sucked it up into his body like a vacuum. Meanwhile, Tanaka and the gang regroup at Mikasa's house where he tells them that he has installed a barrier against evil spirits. He tells them that earlier he ventured out to the strange shrine in the mountain where he found this worn out bag. Inside it, a weird little stone head, which is meant to be a totem to protect against malevolent spirits. The villagers telling him that this is Hikaru's bag, and that he recently been missing out on the mountain. Something that we also know from the opening scenes of episode 1. Tanaka theorizing that this mountain spirit that everyone is afraid of has come down from the mountain and has seemingly found a way to stay hidden in the town while it lurks among us. Tanaka obviously being more right than he actually knows, as we know that Hikaru, well, is not actually Hikaru, but this strange entity skinwalking as him. Back in the forest, the girl Achan freaks out when she hears this loud bang. Hikaru explaining to Yoshiki that he just ate this entity and saved him, saying that the entity wanted to latch onto him, that it was lonely, but only he is allowed to latch onto him, no one else. As once again, this strange, obsessive relationship is teased that is forming between the doppelganger Hikaru and Yoshiki. We then get a flashback to a young Hikaru and his father telling him that should he ever find a girl that he loves, he needs to marry her quickly. That if he doesn't do this, Inuki-sama will drag her into the mountain. That the Endo family has an agreement with this being that it won't touch their family. This being another teaser to this big strange mystery of this entity on the mountain being told here in this story, and a possible explanation as to why Hikaru in the opening scenes of this anime went to the mountain in the first place, before he died and then was claimed and skinwalked by this being. We then flash back to school the next day, where we see Hikaru and Yoshiki standing awkwardly close to one another in a sports equipment shed. Now, this scene is, well, a bit sus, let's say, a bit on the suggestive side, and is one of our first real kind of concrete examples of the interesting relationship and themes of boy love being teased between these two characters. You see, Hikaru wants to explain to Yoshiki how he actually ate this being in the forest, as we watch him unbutton his shirt, revealing a strange slit in his body. Hikaru taking Yoshiki's hand and, putting it inside him. Yeah, I mean, if the themes here weren't obvious, they become more so when we learn that apparently this feels really good to the skinwalking Hikaru. In his words, it feels like a good pat on the head.
You have a poison in your mind, and the fact that you can't see it makes me so sad.
Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a pat on the head make someone make this face. Just when things seem like they are getting a little too sus, Yoshiki screams as he feels his own arm being sucked in, screaming in horror as he pulls away. The two boys having this real awkward and somewhat weird sensual tension in this moment. Now, if you know nothing about this manga or this anime, this scene was probably a bit jarring for many people who watched it. I mean, fuck, dude, I've read a decent amount of this manga, I've seen this scene in the manga, and it was definitely jarring to me watching it play out in the anime. Now, if it wasn't obvious, there's some real underlying tension of boy love themes, we'll say, between Hikaru and Yoshiki. This being made even more weird and really fucked up by the fact that Hikaru is no longer Hikaru, but a being skinwalking as him that happens to have his personality and his memories. To me, though, all of these themes together are actually what make this anime and this story such a good horror story and make it so creepy and really hit so different? Well, I guess this anime has themes of body horror, of weird yokai, eldritch horror-esque beings, and just overall creepy and scary vibes. To me, one of the scariest things about this story is really the up, weird, obsessive, toxic-like relationship that begins to develop between these two characters. Like, this isn't just some sort of like weird fan service scene going on here or a weird attempt by the author to ship these two characters. No, this is very important because it is an intrinsic part of what makes this mystery and horror story so scary. This strange relationship between these two friends, between these two characters, and how Yoshiki is struggling to come to terms with the fact that his best friend, who he may have had some kind of closet feelings for, is now completely gone, replaced by this eldritch horror, skinwalking, nightmare-fueled being that looks and acts like the person he remembers. As we watch this doppelganger Hikaru slowly grow more obsessed and controlling of Yoshiki more and more throughout the story. And while yes, this scene was very much hella sus and obviously has some very, well, we'll say sussy baka references and a bit of deeper kind of meaning and sensual themes going on here, I mean, how obvious can it be when my dude is literally sticking his arm into another person's slit? These scenes do in fact serve a greater purpose to the overall horror of the story and aren't just there for kind of, well, we'll say horny vibes. In the final scenes of the episode, we watch Yoshiki go shopping alone at the supermarket. This lady yapping his ear off, but we can tell that our main character has grown completely detached. The camera shifting rapidly through many different perspectives as this weird situation between him and Hikaru rolls through his mind. Suddenly, though, he is stopped by an older woman, who warns him that he is getting too close to something dangerous. If we remember back to episode 1, this woman could seemingly tell that something was off about Hikaru, and that she seemingly can see things that others can't, as she tells Yoshiki that if he continues to mix with this entity, he will cease to be human. Again, this scene teasing to the mystery that the adults in this story seemingly know way more about the weird, supernatural, f***ed-up things that are happening in this town than they are letting on. The woman giving him her number, saying you can't go on like this, and to call her if he ever wants to talk. Yoshiki then laying in bed later that night as images of Hikaru flash through his mind as episode 2 comes to an end. Episode 3 of The Summer Hikaru Died opens with a flashback between Hikaru and Yoshiki, specifically a memory of the two of them together on a hot summer day eating watermelon. The two boys laughing and just having a fun time together, the two suddenly freaking out at the idea of eating watermelon seeds, afraid that they will be transformed into a watermelon man. We then flash back to the present as Yoshiki goes to Hikaru's house, bringing a fresh watermelon. The two, once again, hanging out on a hot summer day in a scene that very much parallels and mirrors the flashback scene we saw in the opening moments. Hikaru jokingly devouring the watermelon like he did when he was a kid. Hikaru also jokingly referencing the fear that they had when they were children about turning into watermelon people. This series of events very much messing with Yoshiki's head, as the entity skinwalking Hikaru has all of his best friend's memories and mannerisms, but it's very much not Hikaru. Something that Yoshiki is extremely aware of and struggles to come to grips with. This is one of my favorite parts of kind of the horror of this series. The fact that Yoshiki very much knows that this is not the real Hikaru, and almost the more that this skinwalking entity continues to act and pretend and mirror the real Hikaru, the more it is obvious to Yoshiki that this is very much not his friend that he remembers, but merely a cheap clone, an entity almost just role-playing as him. And the more that Yoshiki continues to go along with this farce, the more that it continues to fuck with his head. Yoshiki realizing that he can't go on like this. He can't continue to live like this to pretend that everything is just normal, and not share what he is going through with some other person, as he decides to text the kind woman that he met at the end of episode 2 to meet with her and tell her everything that's going on. Yoshiki is then reminded of Hikaru's father and his death and mysterious disappearance, seeing a picture of them all together when they were kids. The disappearance of Hikaru earlier that year seemingly having some kind of link to the disappearance of his father, as Hikaru went to the mountain around the same time of year that his dad ultimately disappeared all those years ago when they were children. This being another teaser to the kind of greater mystery, the long-term kind of story plot of this anime. Yoshiki then steps out of the room to go and speak with Hikaru's mom, Hikaru waking up looking at his phone, seeing that Yoshiki is having a text conversation with some mysterious person. We then flash over to the next day as we see Yoshiki meeting with this woman, the two of them going to get lunch in an American diner. Here, Yoshiki breaks down into tears, telling the woman everything that has happened to him so far. The woman saying again to him that he cannot be mixing with this entity, as this will ultimately lead him to losing his humanity. The woman being surprised, expecting the entity to take the form of a girl, seeing as the two have been mixing with one another. This being another kind of obvious teaser and reference to the seeming nature of the relationship between Hikaru and Yoshiki, this very boy love-esque relationship, a kind of forbidden love, if you will. The woman then tells Yoshiki about the strange events that have been happening in town. Her theory being that these are all a result of the entity ultimately leaving the mountain. She also theorizes that the death of the old woman that we saw at the end of episode 1 must be connected to this being, something that we, the audience, actually know was directly caused by the skinwalking Hikaru, who we watched kill her in the end of episode 1. The woman again telling Yoshiki that he can't continue to hang out with this person that he knows is gone. The next day at school, we see Yoshiki is struggling with this realization, as he is actively trying to avoid Hikaru. Yoshiki pondering all of the information he learned from this woman in his head, of this strange being's obsession with him, of the threat that it could actually kill him, of the strange name Nonoki-sama, the mysterious entity on the mountain that has been seemingly locked away, the death of Matsura, the old woman, as well as the weird events in the village. Yoshiki ultimately accepting that he must move on from Hikaru, that he must accept that his best friend is dead, and that this being, this skinwalking entity, cannot replace him. As we see Hikaru, like a lost puppy, finally finds Yoshiki alone in this classroom. Yoshiki tells him to walk home alone. Hikaru trying to do a funny face like the real Hikaru used to do to cheer him up, but Yoshiki just looks at him with this cold stare. Yoshiki finally telling him to get out of his face, to leave him alone. Hikaru asks if he's mad at him, if he did something wrong, asking if he has been hiding something from him, asking him why he was secretly messaging some stranger and then meeting them in town. Hikaru saying that you used to tell me everything. Yoshiki in this moment finally snaps, basically saying that he did used to tell Hikaru everything, but that was Hikaru and you aren't him. This kind of realization causing the skinwalking Hikaru's mind to basically kind of break. To understand that Yoshiki is upset because as try as he might, even if his voice is the same, even if he looks like him and acts like him and has his memories, he is not the real Hikaru. The fake Hikaru, overcome with emotion, reaches out, gripping Yoshiki's wrist hard, as it struggles to deal with this overwhelming bombardment of emotions, gripping his wrist so hard that it actually leaves a mark. The being saying that he needs Yoshiki, that he cannot function without him, as it begins actually freaking out, saying it doesn't understand which emotions are his anymore, which emotions are its, and which ones are the real Hikaru's. As we watch the entity's face split, the strange eldritch-like puddle weird being seeping out of him, as Yoshiki can only watch on in horror. Now, if you thought that the scene in the sports closet was, well, hella sus, all I can say is, strap yourselves in for this one, guys. We watch the strange, blob-like, eldritch horror being suddenly surge throughout the room, suddenly diving towards Yoshiki, knocking him on his back as it pins him down. To Yoshiki's horror, the being suddenly begins filling his mouth. Yoshiki freaking out until he realizes that it starts to feel good. I swear to God, this is his words, not mine. I am not making this up. This is how the anime was translated. Yoshiki says this, "It's coming inside of me." Yoshiki getting a vision, a flash of some strange person in the past holding a small child, as he suddenly wakes up coughing and retching. The skinwalking Hikaru crying in shame at having realized what it just did, at having violated him. Okay, so to say that these scenes are sus, I think is like a bit of an understatement. I mean, it's extremely apparent and obvious the certain type of themes, the kind of references, the homages that they were very much going for here in this scene. But you see, if we look a little bit deeper, there is very much like a lot more that is at play here than just these kind of lewd references. No, this kind of imagery very much plays into the ultimate horror themes that are going on here in this anime and this story. So if it isn't obvious, there are very much hidden themes and feelings that are going on between these two characters. There is very much a love for each other between Yoshiki and Hikaru that extends far beyond their friendship. Seemingly though, this love was always unspoken, something more akin to a relationship. Thus, when this skinwalking being ultimately, claimed Hikaru's body and his thoughts, his feelings, and emotions, with it came these feelings of love for Yoshiki as a person. Thus, this obsession with Yoshiki began to be born. An extremely unhealthy obsession that is very much playing on this idea of like a toxic, unhealthy relationship. These feelings of paranoia, of jealousy, of ownership, and forbidden love. Like, these themes, these ideas are horrifying in their own right. If you've ever been in a toxic relationship, or you've seen like a movie or a show that has to deal with a stalker or a toxic relationship, it's very obvious why these things are horrifying or scary. But if you take all of these themes and then you wrap them up in a kind of strange, eldritch, like body-like horror scenario, it's absolutely horrifying. Again, this whole scene and all of these themes would be uncomfortable and horrifying enough without all of these supernatural elements attached to it, but when you combine them together, it becomes downright horrifying in both a visceral way and also a psychological way. And personally, I'm not gonna lie, guys, I find it absolutely fascinating as a lover of horror. Back to the episode, we see the skinwalking Hikaru breaking down in tears, as it realizes that it ultimately violated this person that it cares about. It realizes the depths of what it has done, asking Yoshiki not to hate it, as he quickly runs from the classroom. Later, Yoshiki thinks about the events of today, about how pathetic he was for trying to act like everything was normal. The next day, we see Hikaru hasn't shown up at school, two of Yoshiki's classmates telling him that he should make up with his best friend. Yoshiki seemingly has come to regret what happened the previous evening, and all of the words that he told Hikaru, as he frantically rides his bike to Hikaru's house, bursting inside to find the boy curled up in a blanket in his room. Hikaru being very much embarrassed about what happened the previous evening. In his words, being embarrassed that he totally grossed him out. Hikaru suddenly, though, begins begging with him, telling him that he needs to be with him, asking him and begging him not to hate him. That he knows that ultimately he is just an intruder using his friend's body, but he is still deeply sorry. Yoshiki remembers that he shouldn't get too close to this entity, that it is dangerous for him, that he could lose his humanity, but he seemingly can't help himself, realizing that this thing is just lonely, as he gently and lovingly cradles Hikaru's face. Yoshiki realizing that this creature, this thing, is just lonely, and ultimately naive, and that he will have to teach him, as the episode ends. It then opens with Hikaru feeding this fat cat while Yoshiki watches on amused. Hikaru excitedly saying that he's going to pet it, reaching out, and then poking it in the tummy. The cat running off as Yoshiki laughs, saying, "That's not how you pet a cat." Hikaru being sad as to just how clueless he really is with all the things going on around him in his new human life. As in many ways, this kind of eldritch spirit, this supernatural being that we watch skinwalk as Hikaru, is very much a child. It is super naive and very childlike in the ways that it experiences many parts of like our human world, our human experiences for the first time, and doesn't understand really how to interact in our human world, outside of, well, Hikaru's memories. I mean, technically it is a horrifying, spectral, supernatural, like eldritch horror-like being of a child, but still a child nonetheless. We flash over as we see the two girls who went with Yoshiki and Hikaru in the forest in episode 2 walking home from school, jokingly chatting about their day with one another, about how one of the girls beat this guy in an arm wrestling contest. Finally, the two go to part ways, as one of the girls is about to walk across a set of train tracks. Suddenly, though, we hear a strange, ominous voice seemingly emanating from these tracks, saying, "Coming, coming, coming." The girl with the bob haircut hearing this and telling her friend she shouldn't cross those tracks. Her friend saying she trusts her intuition and decides to go the long way home. Now, this was very much kind of teased in episode 2 when these characters, these two girls, were introduced to us, specifically in that scene in the forest, but it very much seems like this girl here, I can't remember her name, so forgive me, but the girl with the short haircut seemingly is sensitive to the many strange supernatural events that are going on in these villages. She is seemingly able to sense the presence of supernatural beings, of strange, eldritch-like beings, specifically this being from this train track. And while this is only teased now at this point, but I imagine that this ability, this sensitive kind of aura around her, is seemingly going to put her at odds with our skinwalking Hikaru in the future, as it only makes sense as if she is sensitive to the supernatural, if she can sense the supernatural aura of these kind of beings, then she would potentially come into conflict with our skinwalking Hikaru in the future. We move over to Yoshiki's house as we see Hikaru and Yoshiki just vibing out, hanging out like good friends. Downstairs, Yoshiki's little sister Kaoru is begging her mom to let her wear a yukata to the upcoming summer festival. A yukata being a traditional Japanese garment worn at summertime that is in many ways kind of similar to a kimono. Hikaru then getting excited at remembering that the summer festival is about to start. We flash over later that night to the said summer festival, as Hikaru, Yoshiki, and his little sister Kaoru walk around, eating food and just enjoying the festival for all of its festivities. This festival, we learn, being a kind of get-together for many of the local villages in this area. Meanwhile, we see a group of the older male townsfolk complaining about putting the Endo family in charge of the spirit on the mountain. The Endo family being Hikaru's family, as once again they touch on the mysterious ritual, which was seemingly the thing which kept the mountain spirit in the mountain. The spirit also being referenced as a god to these village people. But once again, the fact that Hikaru's dad died left the responsibility of the Endo family fall onto Hikaru, specifically to complete this ritual and keep the townsfolk safe. This ritual being the thing that he was doing on the evening when he went missing in the mountain forest and ultimately passed on. We also get some interesting kind of details on the several small villages that are all in this area, as well as, several bits of drama and details interacting amongst the townsfolk. Specifically, one of them being the strange situation with Yoshiki's home life. The fact that his mother and father fight seemingly constantly, and the fact that his little sister, being more than old enough to go to school, hasn't attended school once. Something that the other villagers judge Yoshiki's family for, and something that Yoshiki hates this small town life. One of the reasons why he has wanted to escape this town and go to a big city. We also see that one of the vendors at this stall is wearing a Christian cross, something that Yoshiki takes notice of, as later on it is revealed in a conversation between Tanaka and these men that 3 of these 4 small villages in this area have seemingly a strong Christian presence, with many churches, and that long ago all of these villages were one larger village. But for some reason, Hikaru and Yoshiki's village seemingly has no Christian presence at all, only possessing a small shrine, leading Mr. Tanaka to question and wonder if the townsfolk have been worshipping this spirit god, this mountain spirit, the entire time. Mr. Tanaka also questioning these men on the purpose of this summer festival, wondering if it has something to do with this mountain god. The men constantly referring to the spirit on this mountain as a god and calling it Nonoki-sama. And as much as many of the people in the town seemingly deny it, whatever is skinwalking as Hikaru seemingly is very much linked with this village and its people. Just as ever with this show, when more information is given to us, when more information is learned, when one question is answered, it seemingly only more and more questions arise, as the many mysteries of this town, the Endo family, Hikaru, and the mountain spirit continue to get more and more strange. Meanwhile, while Tanaka is speaking with his villagers, we watch Hikaru, Yoshiki, and his sister going to get shaved ice, the vendor for the shaved ice being set up in the village shrine. However, as the group try to enter the shrine, Hikaru is suddenly stopped by an invisible barrier. As we learned a few episodes back that Mr. Tanaka had set up a barrier at the shrine for any wayward entities. Suddenly, Tanaka's hamster begins freaking out, the man feeling that this barrier has been damaged, meaning that this spirit, this thing, whatever it is right here amongst the townsfolk at the festival. Hikaru, unable to enter the shrine because of the barrier, makes an excuse to leave, meeting Yoshiki down by this little stream to eat the shaved ice together, as Tanaka goes and checks the shrine, confirming that the barrier is damaged, that this spirit, this thing, is much closer than they all expected, Tanaka theorizing that it's very possible that the spirit might have morphed into something else that makes it possible for it to move amongst the villagers undetected. Meanwhile, Hikaru asks Yoshiki how he realized that he wasn't the real Hikaru, Yoshiki revealing to us that this is because he saw Hikaru's body. We then flash back to scenes in the forest from months earlier, the scenes that we got in the opening moments of episode 1 of this anime, as we watch Yoshiki frantically searching in the mountain forest for Hikaru. What we didn't see before was that Yoshiki actually found Hikaru's body. Just as Yoshiki was about to hurry off to tell someone about finding it, suddenly everything goes black. Yoshiki finding himself back at home, his mother hugging him tightly. Apparently, Yoshiki spent days in bed only to wake up later to find the new Hikaru alive and recovering in the hospital. As we see another memory of the real Hikaru with Yoshiki at this same spot on the river. Yoshiki telling Hikaru about his desire to leave this tiny town, how he hates it here, because everyone sticks their nose in everyone else's business. Very much the classic problem of a small town that emanates anywhere throughout the world, from America to Japan. The problem being that when a town and when a village is this small, everyone knows each other. Everyone knows each other's secrets. The two discussing another drama that happened with the Yasubura family. Hikaru saying that he heard their son Yusuke was diseased or something. Yoshiki informing him that no, the drama in their family wasn't because the boy was diseased, but because he is gay. Yoshiki again lamenting about how small the village is and how he has no room to breathe, no room to just be himself. As we flash back to the present, watching Yoshiki cry tears of sadness, missing his now gone friend. The skinwalking Hikaru telling him he may not be able to replace his friend, but he will always be there to protect him, and will do whatever he asks of him. The screen fading to black as we return to these strange haunted train tracks. As once again that creepy voice begins to emanate, this time though we see a spectral-like entity rising from the tracks, when suddenly a hand swipes out, seemingly destroying this being, as we see that the kindly woman that befriended Yoshiki was the one responsible for this, as she hopes that Yoshiki is doing okay. The final scenes of episode 4 then occur after the post-credits, as again we are taken back to the night that Hikaru went to the mountain, as we see the moment that he slips and falls, seemingly the moment that will lead to his passing, the moment that will lead to the entity claiming his body. As he lays there bleeding out, Hikaru thinks about how he failed the Endo family duty, about how he doesn't want his mother to suffer once again. His mind going to his close friend Yoshiki, thinking about if he's gone, his friend will be all alone. His eyes grow foggy with blood as he sees a strange red light slowly descending upon him. Hikaru wondering if this is Anuki-sama, as he slowly reaches out for it. His final thoughts being that he wants to stay by Yoshiki's side. This being the moment the strange entity would claim Hikaru's body, as episode 4 comes to an end. Episode 5 opens as we see Yoshiki's sister bathing, when suddenly she looks down, seeing weird strands of long black hair. This is confusing to her as everyone in their household has short hair, as she looks up seeing more of the long hair in the closed bathtub. She reaches out to try to touch it, when creepily, the hair pulls back inside the tub. Yoshiki's sister panicking as she frantically tries to get dressed, as we see a small shadow fly across the screen behind her. She turns in horror as she slowly looks back towards the closed bathroom door, seeing the shadow of a large mat of hair spreading across the door. The young girl screaming in terror for her mother. We flash back over the next day to school, where the kids once again are continuing to practice their choir song, their teacher unable to decide if they are getting any better. Over in home economics, we see the group are making karage Japanese fried chicken, which is hella dank by the way. Hikaru asking Yoshiki why he was staring at the raw chicken earlier in the class. Yoshiki saying, utterly embarrassed, that the feel of the chicken reminding him of the feel inside of Hikaru. Hikaru also blushing and teasing Yoshiki, saying that he was feeling around all by himself. Hikaru then asking him if he wants to try to touch him again. Okay, if it isn't extremely obvious, these scenes are very much a euphemism for, well, found. Obviously, there is this weird horror element to them, the fact that Hikaru is a strange skinwalking being that is obsessed with Yoshiki, while Yoshiki himself seems to feel himself drawn towards this eldritch being that is posing as his best friend. But don't get it twisted, it's very obvious what these scenes are very much like euphemistically implying, this being another reference to the potential relationship and unspoken feelings between Hikaru and Yoshiki. However, these feelings that potentially these two characters had for one another have been warped in this almost twisted way, as the person that Yoshiki cared about is gone, replaced by this strange doppelganger. After school, Yoshiki and Hikaru meet up in an abandoned classroom. Hikaru telling Yoshiki that he's really bad at resisting supernatural entities, so he needs to be careful in the future. Yoshiki then psychs himself up to put his hand once again inside of Hikaru. Yoshiki ultimately doing it as he is freaking out until he realizes that it's not as bad as before. Suddenly though, Yoshiki begins to panic as he feels these strange tendrils of Hikaru's true form begin to wrap slowly around his hand, making its way up his arm, to his face, and head, seemingly moving towards his brain. Hikaru having this look of sheer ecstasy, almost contradicted by Yoshiki's look of sheer panic. Yoshiki screaming out for him to stop as he pulls away in horror, asking Hikaru what he was exactly doing. Hikaru saying that, in his words, "I just touched you back a little." Yoshiki asking if Hikaru is doing this because it makes him feel good. Yoshiki telling him that he can't just be doing stuff that makes other people uncomfortable. Once again, if it isn't plain and obvious, the euphemisms and the real-world kind of references and themes that are playing out here in these scenes between these two characters, then, I don't know what to tell you. Later that evening, Yoshiki remembers back to the conversation he had with the kind woman, specifically what she told him about him mixing with the entity. By mixing, what she meant was a person's inside, this is a quote now, snuggling up to the being, and at some point you become a complete part of it. This entity then staying with you forever, for life, as you begin to attract other supernatural beings to you. Yoshiki looking down at the mark on his arm where Hikaru grabbed him the other day, wondering if it has gotten darker. Meanwhile, his sister says that she is way too scared to take a bath because of the weird wig ghost. We flash over to Tanaka, who tells the other men that he has a plan to locate this strange entity, this strange being, Inonoki-sama. The next day, Yoshiki is filming a Crane Game episode with Sea-Dog VA and the Trash Taste homies, easily winning a prize, while his friends laugh, having a good time, hyping him up with how awesome he is, also teasing Yoshiki for how absolutely emo he is. Yoshiki later mentioning to his friends the strange weird wig ghost that his sister was talking about. Hikaru offering to come over and take a look at it this evening. Hikaru later explaining to Yoshiki that these ghosts and entities are like an impurity or a stain that show up where humans live. However, we know that this being is coming to Yoshiki's house, likely due to his closeness with the skinwalking Hikaru entity. Hikaru goes into the bathroom to deal with the wig ghost, planning to crush it and eat it like he did the last time, closing the door behind him. Yoshiki waits for some time when suddenly he hears a loud bang. Throwing open the door and seeing Hikaru laying in the bathtub under the water, unmoving. Yoshiki reaches down to try to help him when suddenly the wig ghost latches onto him, Yoshiki being pulled into the water as he blacks out, finding himself in some strange dreamlike field. As he looks around, suddenly surrounded by these weird flesh, brain-like throbbing columns.
What an absolutely insane sentence to say out loud.
As we begin to hear different quotes from random's characters over the last 4 episodes suddenly play back to Yoshiki. Yoshiki freaking out when he finds himself being pulled into a memory of him and Hikaru as children. A memory of an argument that they had over the death of a wild bird named Crowley. A bird that the boys had been taking care of until suddenly it died, the boys blaming each other for the death of this bird. This argument ultimately escalating to the 2 boys fighting. As suddenly we pull back to the present, seeing Yoshiki pinning Hikaru down in the bathtub as he is trying to drown him. Yoshiki's eyes, these horrifying saucers of black, as Hikaru realizes that the entity has taken hold of Yoshiki, as he manages to push him off of him. Yoshiki leaning down, biting Hikaru's arm as hard as he can. Hikaru then using his weird eldritch-like powers to eject the ghost from Yoshiki's body. Hikaru seemingly destroying the entity, as Yoshiki in a daze realizes what he has done. The 2 boys then change clothes as Yoshiki apologizes profusely to his friend, as he can't stop thinking about how he was trying to drown and kill Hikaru. Hikaru only caring about wanting to protect Yoshiki, no matter what the consequences are. Yoshiki later that evening thinking that maybe if things continue to go like this new Hikaru could possibly even live a human life. Later after the credits roll, we see Tanaka and one of the men out in the mountain at night. Tanaka destroying a shrine, which we can only assume is to Hikaru, is to Inonoki-sama, cutting his hand, rubbing his blood on a small bell as he tosses it to the ground, saying this little fella will hunt down this entity. The man wondering if Tanaka will be ultimately the destruction of this village, but maybe part of him wants that. As episode 5 of the Summer Hikaru Died comes to an end. Episode 6 opens with Yoshiki daydreaming in class when he is approached by Asako, who asks him about a printout given to him by their teacher, Masuda. This printout is a philosophical story of a swamp man, a young man who gets struck by lightning and dies. Another man with the same appearance and memories seemingly spawning in, not realizing that he is in fact a different person, a different man from the man who just died. So he continues to just live his normal life. The philosophical question of the scenario being, is this newly created person the same person that just died or something completely different? Yoshiki's friends saying that he doesn't think they are the same, but he's not exactly sure why. Asako chiming in, saying that the human cells in the human body changes every day in many different ways. So in many ways, we are a different person every single day. So she believes that this makes them the same person. Now, this is a classic kind of philosophical scenario that is oftentimes tested in the brain transplant thought experiment. Basically, a similar scenario where a person's brain is transplanted into a new body with all of the same memories and personality traits they had before. The question being, is this a new person or the same person? Now, obviously, this question and idea is extremely important to Yoshiki, considering the whole skinwalking Hikaru situation going on. Yoshiki constantly gripping with the nature of this new Hikaru, this new being. The fact that he knows his best friend is dead, but yet here stands before him a carbon copy of that person that has his memories and looks and acts basically just like him. Well, aside from the very weird eldritch horror-like impulses. Yoshiki, though, takes comfort in Asako's logic, and according to her, this would mean that Hikaru is technically still alive. The group continue to practice their choir song for their upcoming performance, as Yoshiki continues to think about Hikaru and this idea of what makes a person themselves. Is it their memory, their cells, or their experiences, their soul, or possibly something else? Later, Asako wakes up Hikaru, who is sleeping in class, giving him back his gym clothes. Asako then asks the friend group if they want to hang out this weekend, as they decide to have a sleepover at Hikaru's house and shoot off fireworks. Hikaru and Yoshiki then riding their bikes home, slowly making their way up a very steep hill. Hikaru's bike pops a flat tire though, one of the village elders, Mr. Mikasa, rolling by in his truck giving them a ride home. We then flash back over to the kids' school later that evening, as we see a flickering light, as the moth-like bug falls to the ground, flailing, the camera fading, the light flickering, as we see a strange shadow-like entity momentarily. The moth continuing to writhe until finally it stops, the light flickering again as we see a horrifying visage, a mortifying floating head, its mouth agape, its eyes wide, two massive black piercing deep pools. The next day, everyone is hanging out at Hikaru's house as the group discuss which fireworks they want to shoot off. Yoshiki goes to Hikaru's room to get a game for them to play when an old hat falls on his head. The hat looking familiar to Yoshiki, as we are then transported into a flashback of their childhood, as we see the same festival from the previous episode but many years prior. Yoshiki's father telling him that the village holds this festival for the god who lives on the mountain, the strange, mysterious mountain spirit Nonuki-sama, which so far we have been led to believe is the entity which has claimed Hikaru. His father telling him never to climb that mountain, as he would get snatched up. Suddenly, Hikaru and his father come walking up to them, as we see that the hat that fell on Yoshiki's head did belong to Hikaru's father, as we are transported back to the present. Yoshiki then goes to grab the game when suddenly a piece of paper falls out of Hikaru's clothes. The paper is old and wet with Hikaru's handwriting and the word Hichi and the phrase the Indo's roll, the Indo being Hikaru's family name for context, as Yoshiki puts the paper into his pocket. From the information we know so far, this piece of paper likely belonged to the real original Hikaru, and it got wet from the rainy day in the mountain when Hikaru passed on in the opening scenes of Season 1. Piece of paper seemingly referencing Hikaru's attempt to complete the Indo family ritual with the strange mountain spirit. Later that evening, the group play with the fireworks, having a good time. Asako taking photos to remember the fun evening, and a bunch of really fun, cute scenes with some cool animations of the fireworks. However, their final lighter goes out, Hikaru then deciding to walk to the nearby town to get a new one, Asako wanting to join him. On their walk, Asako chats with Hikaru, asking him about the mountain and saying that she is really glad that he is back and okay. Asako then nervously asking Hikaru, "Who are you, really?" Hikaru turning around in shock and horror, the screen fading to black as we are taken into another flashback, this time of a young Asako talking with her grandmother in a playground. Asako hearing a strange banging sound, her grandmother telling her that while she can't hear anything, she does see a little, as their family has the ability to send spirits. something we learned earlier on in the series. Her grandmother telling her that our real world overlaps with the spirit world, and they exist right alongside us. Later on, Asuko sees her best friend Yuchan as the girl excitedly begins to run across the street to the playground. Asuko suddenly stops, hearing the sounds of footsteps as she sees a spectral entity making its way towards Yuchan, the spirit saying "look out" as in the distance a car is coming speeding down the road. Asuko yelling for her friend to stop. As she does so, the car comes flying by, almost running her over. Asuko realizing that the spirit was trying to warn her. We shift back to the present, Hikaru looking at Asuko completely stunned as he is terrified that she knows his secret, that he is not the real Hikaru. Hikaru's eyes shifting as he steps towards her, putting his hand on her face as he creepily looks at her in this horrifying scene. His eye shifting, his pupil opening, releasing the strange eldritch entity inside of him as it emerges, coming towards her. Suddenly though, Yoshiki's voice breaks through the scene as Hikaru pulls back, the entity moving back inside of him. Yoshiki stunned and in horror as he just witnessed basically this entire scene. As Asuko falls back unconscious, Yoshiki stopping Hikaru from killing her. Hikaru stumbles back as he attempts to explain what happened, as he mumbles that he probably shouldn't do that to Asuko. Yoshiki realizing what in fact Hikaru was trying to do, saying that this is a human life. Hikaru responding that dying and living really aren't that different. Is it actually better to be alive, as being dead or alive makes no difference to a creature like Hikaru that is technically not alive. Yoshiki asking if Hikaru lied when he said that he didn't want to kill him. Hikaru shifting, saying no, Yoshiki is special, but yet Hikaru can't seem to comprehend what makes Yoshiki special to him. Yoshiki realizing that this new skinwalking Hikaru was the one behind the death of the old woman earlier on in the season, as suddenly we get what might be my favorite horror moment of the series so far, as we watch Hikaru's mouth open obscenely wide, an eye opening deep within it, Yoshiki freaking out and vomiting as Asuko wakes up. Asuko explains that she believes that Hikaru has been possessed by a bad ghost, as Asuko noticed different things about him since he came back, but she got the sense that this ghost that was possessing him was trying to protect Yoshiki, so it might not be all bad. Yoshiki then sends Asuko back to Hikaru's house as he leaves angrily. The next day, we see that Hikaru is very upset as he thinks about what life is and how death doesn't make you disappear from the world. And even though Yoshiki has a pretty soul, he doesn't want him to die, as he struggles with, again, what is his own feelings versus what is the memory of the first Hikaru. As the next day, Hikaru prepares to leave to go to school, Yoshiki meeting him at his front door to his surprise as the episode ends. Episode 7 opens here, as Yoshiki meets Hikaru at his house, both of them heading to school together, Hikaru being genuinely surprised that Yoshiki isn't angry at him for the events of the previous night. Yoshiki is surprising Hikaru again by suggesting the two of them ditch class together and go hang out at the movies. Meanwhile at school, we see that their class is preparing for the choir competition that day, that we have seen them practicing for all season long. Their friends being surprised that Hikaru and Yoshiki aren't at school yet. Achan strangely not being able to hear her friend Yuchan say hello to her. Meanwhile, we see Yoshiki's sister skip another day of school heading to work with their mother, while Yoshiki's father is up on the mountain preparing to work at the lumberyard. Hikaru and Yoshiki take the train into town, Hikaru still concerned that Yoshiki is mad at him, despite Yoshiki telling him that he isn't. But we can tell that something is definitely off with our main character, as it very much seemed like the events of the previous episode have seemingly shaken him deeply. The two friends then go to the movie. Hikaru again still not convinced that Yoshiki is not upset about the events of the previous day. Meanwhile, we see the students at the school do their choir performance, singing the choir song we've heard the entire series so far, as we see a montage of Yoshiki's mom and father, as well as the two boys getting ice cream and hanging out. The scene very much feeling like a callback to the scene we got in episode 1, where we saw another montage scene of Yoshiki and Hikaru hanging out. Yoshiki winning Hikaru a prize in the crane game. Sea-Dog DA would definitely be proud. Hikaru saying that he is the nicest guy ever, as Yoshiki makes this hella sus face. Yoshiki then calls his mom just to say hi and to check in and see if she's alright, then telling his mom to tell his dad to take care. His sister asking his mom why Yoshiki was speaking so quietly. Now, if it isn't obvious, something is definitely up with our main character at this point, and I love the very subtle way that the story is conveying these feelings. Obviously, we know Hikaru's actions the previous night and the near death of Achan have severely affected him, and judging from Yoshiki's actions so far in this episode, it definitely seems like he is planning something. As well, we've seen him do a number of strange things. Besides his demeanor generally changing, he skips school when he seemingly never does that and calls his parents out of the blue just to check on them. This screams of the actions of a young man who is planning something potentially dangerous, even life-threatening. We then see Hikaru and Yoshiki walking along together, chatting, Hikaru saying that he would love to go see the ocean, as we see Yoshiki's demeanor shift in this conversation, but then changing back to normal, as he says maybe over summer break they can go to the beach. Yoshiki and Hikaru going back to Yoshiki's house just to hang out. Yoshiki showing Hikaru a video of the choir concert from school that they missed, as he gets up, walking off screen, reaching into a bag and grabbing something, as we see him return with his hand hidden behind his back. As in a flash, Yoshiki stabs Hikaru. Yoshiki falling to the ground with blood on his hands, shocked at what he just did, as he panics, saying that he knew Hikaru couldn't die. Yoshiki wishing he could have taught Hikaru to be different. Hikaru realizing that his best friend hung out with him all day just so he could kill him. Yoshiki wanting Hikaru's last memory to be a happy one, but since Hikaru won't die, this strange skin-walking entity won't die, he asks him to kill him instead. Hikaru then struggling with the thought of killing Yoshiki. Hikaru realizing that he doesn't value life enough, that humans are in fact afraid to die, and that's probably what is wrong with him and makes him different. Hikaru then reaching inside of himself as we watch him tear a piece of this eldritch entity out of himself. Hikaru telling Yoshiki that he has made himself smaller, so he won't be able to kill people as easily. Hikaru over this time seemingly has come to terms with these new emotions and this sense of belonging, these emotions belonging to the original human Hikaru, this feeling of having friends and a person he deeply cares about, of a person that accepts him for what he is. Yoshiki realizing that he shouldn't expect Hikaru to understand the meaning of life, as they are very much looking at this from two different perspectives from two different worlds. Yoshiki telling the entity that you aren't supposed to be in this world, but if you want to stay in spite of that, let's do some research into what you really are, as we see a series of strange, ominous scenes flash before us. The two boys sitting together looking at one another as the screen begins to flash, as we see the eldritch blob-like entity within Hikaru slowly begin to consume Yoshiki, as episode 7 ends. Episode 8 opens with Yoshiki trying to wash the bloodstain out of Hikaru's shirt, the two of them trying to make sense of the old note they found the original Hikaru wrote, as they wonder if this Nonoki-sama refers to the spirit that took over Hikaru. They ask Hikaru's grandfather about the old note, as the old man begins to ramble, his grandfather asking him where Hichi-san went, the boys not knowing this, but Hichi-san referring to the small strange token that Tanaka found. The token the original Hikaru took with him when he went to the mountain on the day that he passed. His grandpa referring to the village as a cursed village, a murder village, as the man drifts off to sleep. This being one of our first real clues as to the long-running mystery of this village and the strange entity on the mountain. Later on, Asako talks to Hikaru at school, telling him that ever since earlier that night, she seemingly can't hear out of one of her ears anymore. Asako telling him that she's been seeing all sorts of strange entities over the town lately. Yoshiki explaining this to Hikaru, but Hikaru is again unable to really grasp what he has done to her. Later in class, Yoshiki thinks about the strange curse on the town, and if this could be referring to Hikaru or Nonoki-sama, as he found a thread online about how the name of their village is particularly strange. Yoshiki then looking outside, where to his horror he sees a man not wearing clothes, holding a knife waving up at him. Yoshiki freaking out, thinking this is another strange spirit entity coming to get him, coming to kill him. Suddenly though, a girl in his class screams, everyone looking out the window, Hikaru telling him that this isn't a spirit, as we watch the man, to our absolute horror, slice himself. After this, Asako tells the boys that the man was possessed, that she saw a strange evil spirit inside of him. Hikaru in the commotion bumping his arm, realizing that he now feels pain. The boys then go to the city library looking at old maps of all of the villages, as they realize the villages on the map make the shape of a human body. They continue to research, discovering that a famine and plague killed many villagers in the 1700s. The librarian walks over to them, telling them that they need to keep quiet. the boys realizing that this is Matsura's daughter, the old woman that Hikaru offed in the beginning of the series. The boys asking her about Nonuki-sama and her mother. Miss Matsura saying that her mother saw something terrifying in the forest when she was young. Miss Matsura explaining that Nonuki-sama is like a god to these people, a god who blesses the villagers in exchange for a particular offering back in the day. Long ago, the mini villages were one large village that worshipped Nonuki-sama. However, after a famine wiped out many villagers, it became a cursed god. Miss Matsura saying that her mother went kind of crazy after her little sister went missing on that mountain, and that Mr. Takeda and his old father, Old Man Takeda, might know more about what is going on with the spirit and what happened to her sister. The boys then leave with all this information, Yoshiki asking Hikaru if he even realizes that what he did to Miss Matsura by offing her mother. Hikaru still not really understanding the value of human life. Yoshiki in this moment deciding that even if Hikaru hurts someone again, he will bear that sin with him. Which low-key is a absolutely insane thing to think. Yoshiki again thinking the more he learns about this strange new Hikaru, the more it becomes evident that he can't stay here. We then watch Tanaka arrive at the Takeda household, giving his strange rusty sword to Mr. Takeda, saying to give it to his old man. As Tanaka is leaving, he runs into Yoshiki on the road, his little hamster reacting to Yoshiki knowing he has been touched by something spiritual. Tanaka begins questioning him in a somewhat tense scene, asking him about local souvenirs. Yoshiki then sees the adorable little hamster, the two of them having this hilarious moment where they fawn over the little furry guy together. Tanaka explaining the hamster has been his partner for 12 years, a long time for a hamster to live, as he notices the strange mark on Yoshiki's arm. Tanaka telling him that he reminds him of himself, as the scene focuses on these strange scar-like markings on Tanaka's neck. The man walking away as we hear his internal dialogue, that he realizes Yoshiki has seemingly mixed with some kind of entity. Again, Tanaka questioning if this entity is somehow disguised as a human, as he wonders if his little hunting dog can sniff it out. His hunting dog referring to the strange bell ritual we watched him do in a prior scene, as we see a terrifying spectral visage holding the bell in the movie theater that Hikaru and Yoshiki were in a few days prior. The next day, Yoshiki and Hikaru are getting lunch, Hikaru telling him not to lose the piece of himself that he gave him, as if it breaks, it might destroy him fully. Suddenly, though, we watch the room grow quiet, all the patrons seemingly fading away. Yoshiki hearing the chiming of a bell, as behind Hikaru he sees sitting a strange headless smoke-like being, Tanaka's hunting dog. As he looks down beneath the booth table, the horrifying face slowly sliding up. Hikaru grabs Yoshiki's hand, as we watch the head float around them, Hikaru attempting to absorb the entity in his body, but it doesn't work, blood leaking out of his eye, Hikaru realizing he can't destroy it because he has weakened himself. The two boys then frantically run for the exit, trying to escape, but they are locked inside, as we watch the entity slowly stumble towards them, Yoshiki panicking, until suddenly he is slapped out of it. Literally slapped out of it, slapped in the face. As he looks up, the cafe back to normal, seeing the kind older woman who helped him previously, as the episode ends. Episode 9 opens with a flashback, as we see a younger version of Hikaru and Yoshiki paying their respects at the Endo family grave, specifically for Hikaru's father. Hikaru can't help but wanting to eat the manju buns being offered at the grave, as we see even in grief, Hikaru, back when he was alive, was still a playful little dork. Back in the present, the boys have been taken to Kurabayashi's house after their encounter with the horrifying Bell spirit. She comments on how she didn't expect Hikaru to look so normal, being that again he is a strange entity, an eldritch horror-like being, maybe even a god, some kind of entity that is somewhere between life and death. Yoshiki asking what exactly was the spirit that attacked them, as she explains it was some sort of a curse, a powerful impurity, similar to ghosts or spirits that linger on the borders of our world, these spirits being easily able to cross over to our side. Kurabashi with her gift cannot destroy these impurities, she can only send them back to their side. As she comments that Hikaru likely attracts impurities like a lightning rod, and Yoshiki now too attracts them, as he has spent so much time with Hikaru. Yoshiki's mixing with Hikaru, making him less and less human, thus attracting these impurities. As Kurabayashi speculates that when the entity that is Hikaru was on the mountain, it attracted the spirits there, so the villagers didn't have to deal with them. Now, though, that the spirit is in Hikaru's body and has left the mountain, these spirits are beginning to affect the villagers. Hikaru finally wakes up, confused mid-conversation, having finally recovered. Hikaru saying that he isn't going to hurt her. Not like he could even if he wanted to, as we know that Hikaru is much weaker now. Kurabashi offering him some manju buns, which he ravenously devours. Kurabayashi then tells the boys a story about how long ago her husband rose from the dead, how an impurity used to visit her, and she let it play with her son, believing it to be the spirit of her husband. And while her husband's soul was possibly in this spirit, it was still an impurity. This impurity ultimately attacking and hurting her son. Hikaru's case is different though, as Hikaru is more like a god, something that transcends the cycle of life and death. Kurabayashi, though, doesn't know anything about the name Nonoki-sama, and she asks the boys what they would like to do. Hikaru saying that he has found a place he belongs, he has found a home, so he wants to protect it, Yoshiki vowing not to leave Hikaru's side. Kurabayashi tells the boys that she will help them come up with a plan, as they decide that they will speak with Old Man Takeda to learn some more info on Nonoki-sama. We then flash over to Tanaka, the paranormal investigator in the woods at the shrine of Nonoki-sama, as his bell spirit has returned from its mission, the spirit charging him, entering into his body, as he cries out in pain. Tanaka seemingly getting the information on what the spirit saw with Hikaru and Yoshiki in the restaurant at the end of episode 8. Back over to the boys, Kurabashi tells them that people in this town owe her some favors, so if Old Man Takeda gives them some issues, just to drop her name, as she holds Hikaru back, wanting to speak with him one-on-one, telling him not to let Yoshiki mix with him anymore, as if he does, he will cease to be human. Yoshiki then tells Hikaru to walk home alone, as he has to go and take care of something personal, as we watch Yoshiki go to a small shrine in a shack, where Crowley, the little bird's grave is, another unmarked grave lying next to it. This grave we assume being for the real Hikaru who died, as Yoshiki pays his respects. Hikaru then enters, as this shed was the spot that the boys used to play in when they were young, even drawing a homemade Mario level on the wall. Hikaru asks Yoshiki how different he is from the real Hikaru, Yoshiki telling him the real Hikaru could read a room like a grown-up, and was a closed book. Yoshiki accepting that his best friend is truly gone for good. Hikaru asking if he liked him, and by like him he definitely means in a romantic way. The answer seemingly being yes, but Yoshiki doesn't want to admit it, saying he doesn't feel that way about the new Hikaru. But again, it's hard to tell exactly how truthful Yoshiki is being, as this kind of teaser of a relationship between these two characters is definitely an important part of this anime, this show. The boys then deciding to go over everything they've learned so far. That Nonoki-sama was some kind of a god who granted wishes in exchange for something, but they don't know what it is. However, long ago, in the 1700s, a famine killed a bunch of villagers, who then turned on the spirit, viewing it as a cursed god. The spirit then stopped coming down from the mountain, almost as if it was sealed away, and over time, this big village split into smaller ones. They then think back to what Hikaru's grandfather said about the Endo family and their ritual, and the use of Hichi-san, which we the audience know is the small little head totem that Mr. Tanaka now has, as they presume that the Endo ritual was to make sure Nonoki-sama stayed locked up on the mountain, as they again wonder if Hikaru, the true spirit of Hikaru, is some sort of god. Hikaru then wondering if he should go back to the mountain, because the spirits are attracted to him. Yoshiki wondering if they can somehow trap all of these impurities on the mountain, saying as long as they keep studying and learning more, they might be able to better understand what Hikaru is, and how to ultimately get rid of these impurities from the village. They then try to go and visit Old Man Takeda, to get some more info on Nonoki-sama and the Endo ritual. They go to his house, dropping Kurabayashi's name, which gets them inside to speak with the old man. The man seemingly losing his marbles, as he believes that he is the next one of the villagers that is going to die to the spirit, possibly die to Nonoki-sama. Takeda desperately wanting to speak with Kurabayashi, as he believes she is a true medium, the only person who actually understands spirits and can help him. The man explaining that Nonoki-sama has come down from the mountain, the mention of the name angering him. Specifically, he is angry at the Endo family, Hikaru's father and Hikaru himself. The man saying that this is all the Endo family's fault, because of a blasphemous act, an act that led to many deaths, an act that seemingly happened back in the 1700s, hence why the Endo family must climb the mountain, to apologize to Nonoki-sama and to return something, though he does not say specifically what they need to return. the man saying that the village is cursed by the disgraceful request that the Indo family made all those years ago. Again, though, we don't actually know what this request is, as the old man grows angrier and angrier, lashing out at Hikaru, who again is a member of the Indo family, telling him to look at his family temple. Hikaru in this moment, though, realizes that something is extremely wrong. Old man Takeda is not himself. There is some sort of spirit inside of him, as the man's form begins to change, as we watch him transform, his hair growing longer, his face changing, the man reaching for the broken katana, drawing the blade, as he lashes out at the boys, as we need to remember that this katana was given to him by Mr. Tanaka. They are suddenly saved, though, by Mr. Tanaka, who comes in out of nowhere, taking the katana, kicking the spirit away. He looks back at Hikaru, saying, "Sorry, kid, I just need to check something," as to our horror and shock, Tanaka swings the chipped blade, it severing Hikaru's neck as black spirit energy flies out. Yoshiki can only look on in shock and horror as he looks at the head of his best friend rolling before him, as he reaches down, picking it up, unable to accept that Hikaru might actually be dead this time, as again he looks down at this severed head in his hands. Suddenly, though, the strange spirit-like substance comes flooding out of Hikaru's severed neck, as episode 9 of The Summer Hikaru Died comes to an end. Episode 10 opens as Yoshiki can only look on in shock and horror as he holds the decapitated head of his best friend. Suddenly, though, the strange eldritch-like spiritual entity within Hikaru begins erupting from its severed neck, knocking Tanaka's sunglasses off as Yoshiki desperately attempts to stick Hikaru's head back onto his body. The strange eldritch-like substance that is seemingly the true form of Nonoki-sama spreading out everywhere, as Tanaka laughs like a madman. Finally, Yoshiki forces Hikaru's head back onto the body, as the strange essence seemingly pours back inside Hikaru's body, his head sticking back on, Yoshiki passing out in the process. Yoshiki then comes to later in the hospital, his mom watching over him as she asks him if old man Takeda really did attack him, as she says also the incident is being swept under the rug, as a minor village feud. Hikaru is still asleep in the bed besides Yoshiki, still passed out from, having his head cut off. We flash over seeing Tanaka holding a towel to his eyes, the man thinking that it has taken forever, but he has finally gotten lucky. He finally has found what he has been looking for. Tanaka seemingly knowing a lot more about the true nature of Nonoki-sama, as he thinks how he has made a lot of progress towards his ultimate goal, which still remains a mystery to us, the audience. Takeda, the son of old man Takeda, then interrupts Tanaka, telling him that his father likely won't survive this whole ordeal. As to our surprise, we learn that Tanaka is actually blind, that his sight was taken from him long ago, seemingly by something paranormal, but his sunglasses allow him to see, given to him by his strange, mysterious company. Takeda questions Tanaka about why he is here, knowing that this has something to do with more than just his company. But Tanaka dodges the question, telling him he is on the side of humanity and plans to do something about Nonoki-sama. Yoshiki has gone home from the hospital, eating dinner with his family, his father getting home, obviously very worried about what happened to his son. The next day, Yoshiki is checking up on Hikaru with Miss Kurobayashi. On the TV, a news reporter talks about a YouTuber who went missing at an apparent haunted tunnel nearby in their region. This being a reference to a set of real-life tunnels in Japan and the urban legends around them, that the fact that these tunnels are haunted as well as a nearby village is haunted. Kurobayashi tells Hikaru the reason that the Darumazuka tunnel is haunted is because bones were found there a long time ago, an old set of bones, but strangely they were only the bones of human torsos. Not long after this, the bones of human arms were found in Urikari, the leg bones then found up in Ashidori. All that was left then was the skulls, which were never found. Yoshiki thinking back to how all the strange entities that he's seen so far had something strange going on with their heads and necks. They then discuss Tanaka, who hasn't been seen in the last 2 days. Yoshiki thinking he's some sort of spirit medium who's been sent here to exorcise Nonoki-sama. This making Kurobayashi laugh, as she believes that no human has the power to do this. Maybe they could possibly move the spirit or trap it in some way, but they don't have the power to exorcise something as powerful as the thing inside Hikaru. As Kurobayashi says she plans on investigating this strange man. Just then Hikaru wakes up, his eyes moving over to Yoshiki, as something strange begins to happen. Hikaru's weird power seemingly reaching out and grasping at Yoshiki, possibly attempting to take his spirit and soul, when Kurobayashi steps in, stopping it. Hikaru then comes to, seemingly having no memory of what just happened, the boy acting like his normal goofy-ass self. The next day the two boys head to school, their friends being extremely happy to see them. As they are talking, Maki asks Yoshiki if he is researching Onuki-sama. Maki tells them that Onuki-sama was once a secret code word used in the villages, that back in the 1700s when they had a famine, they needed to lower the population. So they made a drug out of mercury, mined from the mountain, to get rid of babies. This drug being called Uronuki medicine, which gave rise to the mountain's name, Nisayama. Nisa meaning cinnabar, a material that is a source of mercury. After the village used this drug for some time, they enshrined it as a god of the mountain, and after doing this, the disease and famine seemingly stopped. Maki explaining that his older brother at university in Tokyo researches this kind of stuff, as Yoshiki gives him some questions to ask him. In a quick sidebar, Yoshiki then asks Hikaru why he visited him the previous night, and then seemingly randomly left, a scene that we haven't seen play out so far, Hikaru saying he doesn't know why he did this, the answer to this not being revealed until the post-credits scene, which we are going to discuss in a minute. Maki tells him his brother replied, saying that by the time the village split up in the 1700s, Onuki-san was gone as a religious figure. However, there were still rumors of a curse befalling those in this area. From this moment on, Christianity began to spread throughout this region, the new village adopting this new religion. All of the villages except for Kubitachi, which still worships Onuki-sama. Yoshiki then speculating that Onuki-sama's name was changed to Onuki-sama by the time that all of these villages split. Every other village forgetting about Onuki-sama except for their village, which wasn't allowed to forget, likely from this mysterious ancient Indo family sin that the family committed. They then go to Hikaru's house visiting the Indo family temple, opening the door to see a shrine filled with wooden heads. Hikaru suddenly getting some of his memories back, as he remembers his dad telling him these heads are offerings to Onuki-sama, and that they are all the heads of dead people, and that the other body parts had to be buried as far away as possible, explaining why all the bones were found in the other villages. This being why the village was ultimately split into 5 separate ones, and that most of the heads belonged to the elderly or terminally ill, but sometimes people were killed and sacrificed, and that this is the curse of this village. This is why it is referred to as a murder village. Hikaru, though, can't remember everything, as he still can't remember what exactly was the Indo family sin. Yoshiki thinking that they could possibly ask his dad for more information. After the credits roll, we see the scene from the previous night when Hikaru visited Yoshiki at his house, as we see Hikaru is in some sort of a daze, acting more on his eldritch being's impulses, wanting to go, in his words, fill himself up, and then he will be satisfied, as this is what he is supposed to do, as we then see the light inside of Yoshiki, seemingly Yoshiki's soul. Hikaru suddenly snapping out of it, realizing exactly what he is doing as he suddenly stops himself and forces himself to leave, as episode 10 of The Summer Hikaru Dies comes to an end. Episode 11 opens as Yoshiki goes to speak to his father, wanting to get more information on Hikaru's dad, as their two fathers were close childhood friends. Here we get a closer look at the strained relationship between Yoshiki and his father, as we see them interacting in a flashback scene playing together. Yoshiki ironically being more interested in the monsters in the battle between Ultraman and his kaiju foes. We then transport back to the present, seeing the stark contrast between the relationship between the boy and his father, now as the two have grown far apart from one another. Yoshiki's dad agreeing to tell him what he knows. We are then taken to another flashback, this time between Yoshiki and Hikaru's dad as high schoolers. Hikaru's dad lamenting about a girl that he likes. As he says, as an Indo family member, they have to marry the person they love quickly in order to get them into the family so they are safe, as Hikaru's dad finally reveals the Indo family sin. As we learned that long ago, the wife of the Indo family head died, becoming an Okubi-sama. An Okubi being a yokai in Japanese folklore that takes the form of a giant head, and is generally a woman. The head of the family took his wife's head up the mountain, offering it to Onuki-sama, asking the spirit to bring his wife back to life, declaring that he would bring the spirit anyone's head, as long as they aren't from the Indo family. That same day, a third of the villagers died in a variety of horrifying ways, many of them losing their heads, the man's wife coming back to life, but only as a severed head, later dying again that night. However, the mysterious deaths all seemed to stop, along with the famines and poor harvests that plagued this area, as the Indo family continued to offer heads to the spirit on the mountain. Hikaru's dad saying his family is still in possession of the wife's head all these years later, whose name was Hichi. It being revealed the small totem Hichi-san is in fact the head of this woman, and that every 5 years the men in the Indo family take Hichi-san's head to the mountain, begging the god to stay up there. That is until Hikaru had his tragic accident on the mountain, and then his body was claimed by the same eldritch-like being spirit. Yoshiki's dad wondering if Hikaru's dad's death was even really an accident, as he still mourns the loss of his own best friend. It being remarkable how similar Yoshiki and his father are, as they both have suffered very real, similar experiences. We also learn that Yoshiki's father has a tenuous relationship with the entire family, as he has been avoiding speaking with Yoshiki's mother, but we don't know exactly why or what happened to make this family relationship so tense and broken. We flash over to Hikaru looking at his family's temple, as he thinks about everything the Endo family has done for him, aka Nonuki-sama, as eerily we see the wall of wooden heads, one of the heads changing to Yoshiki's head. Yoshiki takes some of his dad's books, thinking over all of the information he has learned so far, as well as the origins of the Endo sin. Yoshiki thinking how this area has been plagued by diseases for a long time, this likely being a result of the impurities, the spirits. But then it seemingly all stopped after the Endo sin incident. As he wonders if Nonuki-sama really is a lightning rod for impurities, what was this spirit doing during all of the famine incidents before this? Yoshiki realizing that Nonuki-sama is likely a god, a spirit that grants requests. Also, he wonders why there are so many impurities in this area specifically. He then knocks over a stack of books, seeing an art book. He opens it, seeing a painting of something strangely familiar. A strange, amorphous, tendril blob that he recognizes as the true eldritch horror-like form of Nonuki-sama, the art being labeled as the Sketch of Gehenna, 1519. This being the last time that this is discussed in this episode, but I have a very interesting theory on this sketch specifically and what it might mean for our story, which I will discuss later on in the video. Back at school, we see Hikaru tell Yoshiki about the information that he has learned. Yoshiki offers to give Hikaru the piece of himself to make him stronger again, but Hikaru declines, saying he doubts he would even be able to reattach it. Hikaru then asks Yoshiki what the original Hikaru is like. Yoshiki describing him as the main character in an anime, athletic and funny, popular with the girls, a person who had many friends. Yoshiki obviously missing his friend greatly. Oh, there's also this really interesting symbolism scene of these two pages from this kid's book. The first being a scene of a queen who tells a monster that chicken is tastier than people. The second scene saying the monster pondered this. These two scenes very much mirroring the kind of relationship in these interactions between Yoshiki and Hikaru, with Yoshiki as the queen and Hikaru as the beast. Yoshiki wanting Hikaru to stop hurting people, and Hikaru pondering this. The boys then walk down the hall of the school, getting ready to leave, when something strange happens. Hikaru suddenly stops, his eyes narrowing, as he looks at Yoshiki. We then see the bright glowing light of Yoshiki's soul. Hikaru's face begins to glitch as he smirks horrifyingly, the boy trying to speak, as we see the Nonuki-sama entity slowly begin emerging from his neck as he walks forward. Yoshiki in a panic running down the hall towards the stairs. He stops when he hears the sound of other students down below, closing his eyes in fear. When he opens them, his eyes go wide with shock and panic, as before him he sees the eldritch horror entity of Nonuki-sama emerging from Hikaru's body. Hikaru's head stuck in the side of this blob in a scene of amazing body horror, as it reaches down, enveloping a horrified Yoshiki. Yoshiki opens his eyes, as he is now inside the creature. He is surprised that it's not as weird as he thought it would be, wondering if this is because of how much he has mixed with the creature. Hikaru's eyes then open as he reaches out towards Yoshiki's spirit. Suddenly, though, he comes back to his senses, the entity then retreating back inside Hikaru's body, as he falls back in horror, realizing what he almost just did. We then see their friend Asako witness this whole encounter as she quickly runs down the stairs. Hikaru continues to freak out, saying he should have known this was going to happen. He is a monster after all, as the boy runs away. Yoshiki later on the train ride home thinks about what just happened, as he is still determined to accept Hikaru for what he is, as even this creature deserves a home. Hikaru then goes and visits Kurobayashi, as she explains to him that when a person is mixed, an impurity gets mixed into their soul. And what happens then is that the boundaries between the spirit world and the real world begin to get fuzzy. Hikaru telling her how it's hard for him to comprehend love or family or anything human like that, but Yoshiki told him that he doesn't have to become human to be accepted. But he really doesn't want to hurt Yoshiki, but it's getting hard to control himself. Hikaru wondering if he should go back to the mountain, if that would somehow solve all of these issues, as he begins crying, the boy not wanting to be alone. Kurobayashi realizes just how dangerous Hikaru really is, and that she should yank the spirit out of the boy's body, but she can't bring herself to do it. Hikaru then heads home, thinking about no matter what happens, no matter what research they do, he will still be a monster, and nothing can seemingly change that. And that him wanting a place just to call home was nothing but pure arrogance, as he heads back to his house, his mother opening the door, beckoning inside, welcoming him home, as episode 11 of The Summer Hikaru Dies comes to an end. The Summer Hikaru Died finale opens with Hikaru in his room, as he is role-playing the conversation out with Yoshiki, specifically about him returning to the mountain with his little finger puppets, as he knows that Yoshiki will likely not accept this decision. The next day we see the kids at school, as summer break is about to start the next day. Everyone is there except for Hikaru, who we see has shown up late playing hooky, and missing the school singing performance, as we see Hikaru wandering throughout the school alone, as he finally ends up in a classroom where he is greeted by Asuko. We then switch over to Mr. Tanaka and Mr. Takeda, Tanaka telling Takeda that he has important info about Nonoki-sama, specifically that it never existed. Tanaka telling him that it's just something that was made up by the villagers a long time ago, and that the Indo family ritual has been completely pointless from the very beginning. However, he believes there is an underlying cause to these strange things that have happened in the village that he plans on taking care of. Now, if this is true, this is obviously a pretty big reveal, as we have been led to believe throughout Season 1 so far that Hikaru is Nonoki-sama. And if he isn't, this only brings up more questions on what exactly the spirit inside of Hikaru truly is. Back in the classroom, we watch Hikaru and Asuka talk for a bit. Asuka finally working up the courage to ask Hikaru if he is actually the real Hikaru. Asuka revealing to him that she saw the horrifying encounter between Yoshiki and Hikaru that we saw in the previous episode, as she witnessed with her own eyes the skinwalking Hikaru's true eldritch-like form. Hikaru tells her that she shouldn't say that stuff out loud to him, as obviously she is risking her life. But Hikaru promised Yoshiki that he wouldn't hurt her anymore, as we watch Asuko begin to cry, the girl finally accepting that her friend Hikaru, the real Hikaru, is actually dead, as the girl grieves him in that moment. The skinwalking Hikaru realizes that this is what all of the boys' friends should be doing, but obviously none of them realize that the real Hikaru is actually dead, as Hikaru thinks maybe Yoshiki and all of the other friends would be better off if he wasn't there anymore, so they could actually mourn the real Hikaru and move on, as Hikaru apologizes to Asuka. We then flash over to Yoshiki in his home with some of his extended family, as we see the societal pressures that are being put upon him and his sister. Hikaru then arrives asking Yoshiki if he wants to ditch and go hang out, the boys taking the train to the next town over. These train scenes are actually really cool, as there is this blend of live action, specifically we can see here in the background of the mountain landscape, as well here in this scene specifically, this very much being live action footage of an actual mountain Japanese town, very similar to the one that I lived in. I think this is really cool, and it's rare you actually see this much live action footage be used in an anime. The boys then go to the arcade, Yoshiki winning a prize for his sister. Yoshiki then asks Hikaru if he remembers anything about Nonoki-sama. Hikaru saying no, but he does feel like he is able to grant requests or even wishes, but Yoshiki doesn't want to test it. Yoshiki then wonders what they should do about the impurities, and what was up with the weird sketch that he discovered in the previous episode. I covered this sketch and all of my theories about it in my video I put out last week over that episode, so go check it out if you're curious about that. The boys then go to the beach together to look at the ocean, Hikaru absolutely freaking out with happiness and joy at getting to see it. He then sees a big snake, the snake's eyes glowing along with Hikaru's, as we watch the snake slither away. The skinwalking Hikaru then revealing to Yoshiki what the real Hikaru said to him right before he died. The boy saying that he didn't want to make anyone sad, and that he didn't want Yoshiki to be alone. The strange eldritch-like entity granting his request, taking over his dead body, hence why he is here right now. He then tells Hikaru that he is having a hard time controlling his monster-like impulses, specifically his craving for human souls. But he has decided that he will climb back up to the mountain in order to protect everyone in the village from the impurities, and show Yoshiki and Hikaru's other friends can ultimately move on with their lives. Yoshiki obviously doesn't take this very well, the boy freaking out in anger as he charges into the ocean, grabbing Hikaru's shirt. Yoshiki angry that Hikaru would make such a reckless plan, angry that he has been doing all of this research seemingly for nothing. Hikaru then telling him, to his shock, that he loves him, and that he really likes spending time with him. Yoshiki's mind in this moment kind of breaking, as the boy has a bit of an existential crisis, as he feels like he is the one who is truly the monster, as his real reason for wanting Hikaru to stay and to help him is purely selfish. Yoshiki has been lying to himself this entire time, lying to himself about doing all of this for the sake of the village and to get rid of the impurities, as he has always hidden his true self from everyone, even himself, his true self being a selfish asshole. At least that's how Yoshiki seemingly sees it. This being probably one of the most emotional scenes of the entire season so far, as we watch Yoshiki beg Hikaru to reconsider. The two boys begin tussling with one another in the ocean in this very suggestive as well as just, very emotional scene. As we slowly fade out, seeing Tanaka watching this encounter between the boys the entire time from a bench nearby on the beach. As Yoshiki continues to beg Hikaru to saying that he is just a shitty, selfish asshole. Yoshiki begging them as though he possibly couldn't live with himself if Hikaru left. Hikaru laughing as he strokes Yoshiki's head, saying it took him long enough. Hikaru cutting Yoshiki off as he sees Kaoru's gift floating away in the ocean. Yoshiki saying he doesn't need it, as the boys go to shore, sitting with each other watching the sunset, as Mr. Tanaka walks up holding Kaoru's floaty, as Season 1 of the Summer Hikaru Dies finally comes to an end. And yes, my friends, this was everything that happened in Season 1 of the Summer Hikaru Died, one of my favorite anime to come out this year, in an absolute amazing year of anime. 2025 really has been one of the best years of anime that I can remember in recent history, with the second seasons of super hot, exciting anime like Solo Leveling, Kaiju 8, as well as Dandadan, as well as the debut of a bunch of really good, interesting anime like Gachi Akuta, Fragrant Flower, Blooms with Dignity, and of course, The Summer Hikaru Died. If you did make it through this entire video, then I give you props. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on Season 1 of this horror anime, as well as its very complex and interesting mystery. If you did enjoy this video, guys, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as your engagement on this video is the easiest way to support me, and it really does go a long way in putting this video into the algorithm. Again, if you did like this video, then want to check out some of my other videos on screen now, like Dandadan Season 1 in its entirety in a nutshell. Thank you again so much for watching, guys. I hope to see you in the next video. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace, love, adu.